Joining us now, Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. He's a member of the Foreign Relations, Judiciary, and Appropriation Committees. And, of course, he's joining us this morning to talk about Marco Rubio on Capitol Hill starting at 10 a.m. Eastern. But before we get to that, Senator, I'm curious if you think the Trump administration is doing enough to restore order, peace to the streets of Minneapolis and other places, and accountability pertaining to ICE. And if not, can Democrats and any Republicans you can bring along with you do anything about it?
Thanks, Mika. No, President Trump and his administration are not doing enough to lower the temperature and to address the tragic killing of Alex Pretty and of Renee Good, and to insist on the sort of transparency and accountability that law enforcement lives with and works with around our country every day. 20 years ago, I was a county executive responsible for the second largest law enforcement agency in my state. And those of us who have worked closely with law enforcement understand that when we give a badge and a gun and swear in police officers, we are asking them to undertake an incredibly difficult and important mission to keep the peace and to protect and serve their communities. What's happened in Minneapolis breaks that trust with the community, and the lack of any involvement by the Minneapolis or Minnesota police in the investigation of these shootings, the lack of a clear, prompt, and transparent investigation, something called for by both Democrats and Republicans here in the Senate, is a critical first step. So if President Trump wants to make any difference here, he needs to withdraw ICE and CBP from Minneapolis. He needs to instigate, he needs to launch a clear and transparent investigation of the sort that happens week in and week out around the country. And we need to move forward with body-worn cameras and a clear protocol for how they're going to be used, with the end of masked agents who are nameless and faceless, and with the end of the assertion of the use of an administrative warrant to get into Americans' homes. All of these are critical steps that we've been discussing here in the Senate. We face a key vote tomorrow on whether or not we're going to go ahead with appropriations. I'm going to vote against DHS appropriations unless and until we have actions like this in law that we can deliver to the American people to show there is going to be accountability and transparency after these horrific killings in Minneapolis.
So, as Jonathan Lemire, correct me if I'm wrong, but Senator, we don't know the ICE agents who, I guess there's two now, who shot up Alex Pretty. We don't know who they are. We don't know, are they still on the job? Or have they been removed from the state? There's a lot of questions about transparency here.
That's right.
Evidence has been taken from the state, or at least from state officials. You're right about body cam video. I'm hearing conflicting reports on that. And I'm just wondering, what would you like, what would be helpful, what would be constructive for Tom Homan to do immediately? I'm going to give you, like, ABCD choice, like an SAT test. Sure. Put the ICE agents on administrative leave.
Yes.
Give evidence back to the state, body cams on all ICE agents. And how about a complete and thorough review of how these ICE agents are being trained? Because from the videos that we get from across the country, from reports from local organizations, people who just want to protect their neighbors, and local governors, because of course, blue states and red states are being treated differently here. But what we're hearing is a lot of laws are being broken in the process of trying to round out undocumented immigrants, which of course they want to call criminal illegal aliens. And it seems to me that it's possible these guys are so untrained that they have no idea what they're doing. They're bumping into each other. And in a scrum like this over Alex Pretty that we're showing right now, NYPD, Minneapolis PD would have had the person down and de-escalated in 3 seconds or less with no one hurt. This doesn't have to happen. There are procedure issues here. Homan has great experience. He worked for Obama. He has the capacity. I know he has put on a different front for this administration, but he has the capacity to know and teach proper procedure. Where is it?
Correct. Correct. So accountability here and moving forward is going to require getting back into a relationship with community of trust, involving career professional law enforcement officials from Minnesota, who understand how to secure a crime scene, how to do an officer-involved shooting investigation transparently and appropriately. Look, Mika, more foundationally, we have First Amendment, Second Amendment, and Fourth Amendment violations happening here. We've got agents claiming that with an administrative warrant, they can get into Americans' homes. That violates the Fourth Amendment. We've got our president saying things that essentially amount to Alex Preddy deserved it because he was carrying a gun he had a permit to carry. This is a striking change from the strong defense of Second Amendment rights we typically hear from Republicans. And Alex Preddy was there as a peaceful protester. He didn't have a gun in his hand. He had a camera. He was recording what ICE and CBP agents were doing. And his last act was to help a woman who'd been shoved to the ground by an overly aggressive officer. As you remark, and as I agree, they are not adequately trained in how to respond to protests and in how to execute warrants safely and securely in a way that's appropriate to this setting. First, they need to withdraw from Minneapolis. Second, they need new and clear procedures. And then third, we need confidence in the leadership of DHS. I don't now. Kristi Noem should resign or be fired, and there needs to be a new chain of command for whatever remains of our customs and immigration enforcement within the United States.
And a pair of Republican senators joined your call for Noem to step aside. Senator Coons, let's now turn to foreign affairs and that testimony from Secretary of State Rubio to your committee in about 45 or so minutes' time. I guess an advance copy of prepared remarks have been released, or at least obtained, and in it, Rubio, on the subject of Venezuela, says that the Trump administration will take additional military action if the new government there in Venezuela doesn't cooperate with U.S. goals. Now, it's not really a new government. It's simply Maduro's second in command. But let's get your response to that, the warning from the Secretary of State. And what other questions do you want to hear answered today about Venezuela?
Look, my former colleague on the Foreign Relations Committee, now Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Marco Rubio, needs to consult more closely and regularly with Congress. These threats to use force against Venezuela by the administration, it's unclear where they're driving and what their goals are. They did not come clean with us about their intention to rendition Maduro out of Venezuela using military force. This wasn't a police action. It was a military action in which nearly 100 Cubans and Venezuelans were killed. I am grateful that no American soldiers were killed in this action. I do not mourn Maduro's removal from power. He was a horrible dictator. But if Secretary Rubio and our president are going to carry out threats and threats of force against Iran, against Nigeria, against Greenland and Denmark, against Venezuela, we need to be more closely consulted, and Congress has a critical role. This is part of what we are here for in the Constitution. The president does have the power to protect the American people in the event of an imminent attack, missiles flying over the North Pole. But they prepared and rehearsed for this military action for months and did not tell us truthfully what they were doing, even when asked directly in a briefing. So I will be pressing Secretary Rubio today, both on Venezuela and what are their plans to advance democracy rather than just secure oil. And what is this armada that is steaming towards Iran now intending to do? And last, how will they repair the damage that President Trump has caused in Europe with our critical NATO and European allies by threatening force and tariffs to try and conquer and wrest away from Denmark the large island of Greenland?
There's a lot. Democratic member of the Foreign Relations and Judiciary Committee, Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. Thank you. It's always good to see you. Thanks for coming on this morning.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.